tell you a little bit about the research project that this workshop emerged from, David, and about the rationale of the workshop. But first, I would like to thank the organizations and people who made this workshop possible. I would like to thank the institute that funded the workshop, and that is the Israeli Science Foundation, the GOLDSTEIN-GOREN International Center for Jewish Thought, and the Faculty of Humanities and Social Studies. I would like to thank Julie Chajes, my partner in the research project on Kabbalah and Theosophy, and in the organization of the workshop. And I would especially like to thank Asher Benjamin for his efforts, the many hours of work, including getting out with a jeep from the place he lives, from the snow yesterday in the last minute, and for taking care of every detail, every request and need of organizers and participants. And now we're going to have the sight and sound. It's very dramatic, this. Just can't see what I... But, okay, Okay, the GOLDSTEIN-GOREN International Center for Jewish Thought is used to host international events. Yet, in this event, the international scope of the workshop is even larger than what we are used to. And it's not only because I have good friends in many locations, but also because of the wide international nature of the movement that stands at the center of the workshop, that is the Theosophical Society. And one of the features of the Theosophical Society that distinguishes it from other Western esoteric movements is its wide international scope. Unlike other Western esoteric movements, the Theosophical Society, which was founded in 1875 in New York, was active not only in Europe and the United States, but also in India, Sri Lanka, China, Iraq, Japan, and many other locations. The scope and the expansion of the Theosophical Society is not just geographical. Although the Theosophical Society was a Western movement and embedded in Western culture, it had a deep interest in other cultures. That was part of its universalistic ideology and esoteric interests. More than any other Western esoteric movement, the Theosophical Society studied and adapted a variety of traditions, mostly but not only Hindu and Buddhist. Furthermore, in difference from other Western esoteric movements, the Theosophical Society included from its beginning non-Christian and non-Western members who took part in the theosophical adaptations and interpretations of their own cultures. The study of such adaptations and transformation of traditions by the Theosophical Society and some of the movement that emerged from it is the main rationale of this workshop. Our interest in the question of theosophical adaptations of traditions emerged out of a research project that examines the Jewish involvement in the Theosophical Society, the formation of Jewish theosophical groups, and the adaptations in the interpretation of Kabbalah by Theosophists, and especially by Jewish Theosophists. These topics are central to the workshop. Yet, as we believe that questions related to Theosophy, Kabbalah, and Judaism should be understood in a wider context, the workshop will examine also theosophical adaptations of other cultures and traditions. Furthermore, we will examine not only the Theosophical Society, but also other related movements, and especially the Anthroposophical Society, which emerged out of the Theosophical Society. My interest in the Theosophical Society and its adaptation of Kabbalah, which eventually brought about a research project funded by the ISF, Israeli Science Foundation, and the present workshop, was quite accidental. In difference from most of the lecturers that participate in the workshop, I started studying the Theosophical Society only recently, and until a few years, I wasn't very much aware at all of the Theosophical Society and its significance. I became aware of the Theosophical Society, of Jewish Theosophists, and of Theosophical perceptions of Kabbalah through my interest in the reception history of the Zohar. As one of my colleagues said, Boaz once was a Zohar scholar. About 6 years ago, I was asked to write an article about the translations of the Zohar. And one of the most intriguing translations I encountered was a translation of part of the Zohar called the Idrazuta, important, one of the most considered sacred parts of the Zohar, into Jewish Arabic. That is Arabic written in Hebrew script. It was published in 1887 in Pune, in India, by one Abraham David Ezekiel, a member of the Jewish Iraqi community in India. I'll mention later, there are three major Jewish communities in India, and one of them are immigrants from Iraq that arrived to India since the 19th century. This translation stirred a controversy. It was banned by prominent rabbis who opposed to translating the sacred text to a vernacular language. The context intrigued me. What was the motivation of Ezekiel to publish the translation that got him into trouble with the rabbinic authorities? The clue I found was another Zohar translation I was looking at for the same article. And that was Samuel Little MacGregor Mather's Kabbalah Unveiled, which I assume many of you, more of you are aware of that translation than of Ezekiel's translation. This is actually, I think, the first translation of important parts of the Zohar into English. Now, this translation was printed at the same year. Both were printed in 1887 and carried the same translation of the title of the term Idrazuta, which can be translated and was translated in a variety of ways, but I noticed immediately that it used the same term, the Lesser Holy Assembly, in Pune and in England, Mather's translation. Now, Mather was one of the founders of the Golden Dawn and a member of the Theosophical Society. As I was aware, I knew a little bit at the time about the Theosophical Society, I was aware that the Theosophical Society was active in India. I made a quick Google search, AD Ezekiel and Theosophical Society, and I found indeed that Ezekiel was a prominent member of the Theosophical Society in India. Here that's the convention in Bombay in 1882, among the people you recognize, especially in the center. You can see also Abraham David Ezekiel. That's the guy here. As Ezekiel's introduction to his translation was written in the Iraqi Jewish Arabic dialect, and as my knowledge of Arabic isn't that strong, I consulted an expert. I contacted Professor Sasson Somech, who is one of Israel's leading scholars of Arabic literature, who was born in Iraq and was fluent in the Jewish Arabic Iraqi dialect. When I told him that I wanted his help in reading a text written by a Jewish theosophist, Somech wasn't surprised at all. He told me that he knew of the existence of Jewish theosophists, but not in India, but in Iraq. Not in the end of the 19th century, but in the middle of the 20th century. He told me that actually his uncle from Basra was a member of a Jewish theosophical group. Somech referred me to several sources, including his biography, Baghdad Yesterday, where he writes about his uncle the theosophist, from which I learned about a Jewish theosophical community which was active in Basra in the late 1920s and until 1936. Theosophy making inroads among Jews of Iraq, and this is in Hebrew. It says here, Markaduri Eini, the head of the Jewish theosophist in Basra, and his family. One of the sources which I found when I started searching for material about the Theosophical group in Basra was a journal called The Jewish Theosophist. From this publication, I have learned of the existence of an association of Hebrew Theosophists, which was founded in 1925 and was active in India, England, United States, and other locations during the 1920s and early 1930s. As I became more and more interested, I looked further into the activities of various Jewish theosophists. I found out that not only Avraham David Ezekiel, but also many other Jewish theosophists were interested in Kabbalah and engaged in studying, translating, writing books and articles about Kabbalah. By then, it became clear to me that I was facing a topic worthy of a larger research topic, a larger research. I applied to the Israeli Sounds Foundation for a project entitled Kabbalah and the Theosophical Society, 1875 to 1936. And to my great delight, I received a 4-year generous grant for this research. And I'm less delighted that this is the last year of the project. My idea was to examine 3 related topics: theosophical perceptions of Kabbalah, mostly of Blavatsky and the early Theosophists, the history of the Jewish Theosophist and the Association of Hebrew Theosophists, and the contribution of the Jewish Theosophist to modern perceptions and modern formations of Kabbalah. When I received the funding, it became clear to me that I will not be able to cover all things of the project by myself, that I will concentrate on the topics related to Jewish Theosophists. But just then, my friend and colleague, Yossi Chajes, told me that he met a scholar from the University of Exeter, Julie Hall, who was finishing her PhD on the concept of reincarnation in Theosophy. And in that framework, she was working on Blavatsky's perceptions of Kabbalah. When he told me that Julie decided to immigrate to Israel, I found the perfect partner for the project. Julie joined the project as a postdoc, and one of the first things we started to do was to plan this workshop. So that's my part of the story, and I'm delighted to invite Julie Chajes, formerly Julie Hall, to tell her side of the story.
Hi, welcome. It really is an enormous pleasure to have you all here. I'm really delighted to be at this conference, which has to be the conference which is closest to my research interests that there ever could be. And some of you are friends, some of you I've met before at conferences, and some of you I know only through your work, which I admire very much. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and getting to know you more or at all. My own interest in Theosophy dates from about my late teens, when I also started getting interested in Kabbalah, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, and all of the rest of it. From there, I went to the University of Bristol to read theology and religious studies, where I specialised in Buddhism under the supervision of Paul Williams and Rupert Geffen. And from there, I did an MA at Bath Spa University, where I focused especially on contemporary religions, especially neo-paganism. When it came time to do my PhD, I was very happy to discover that Nicholas Goodrick Clarke was establishing a centre for the study of Western esotericism at the University of Exeter. So I decided that I had to go there, and I started doing my PhD in 2005 with him. And it was he that suggested the topic for my PhD should be something to do with Theosophy. So I decided to write a thesis about the concept of reincarnation in the thought of Madame Blavatsky. It's an intellectual history of her theory of reincarnation, and I looked at the way in which she read her sources about Hindu traditions and Buddhist traditions and Hermeticism and Platonism, how she read these and how she synthesized them in her theory of reincarnation. And I thought that was a great topic because it allowed me to study quite a wide range of different esoteric currents while still specializing as is necessary in a PhD. And it also allowed me to look at the encounter between India and Europe in the modern period, which was something that I was really interested in. You can imagine how delighted I was when I heard that somebody, Boaz, was putting together a project on Theosophy and Kabbalah here in Israel just as I was emigrating. So following another postdoc at the University of Haifa, where I looked at the sexual mysticism of the early Christian Zionists, Lawrence and Alice Oliphant, I started this postdoc on Theosophy and Kabbalah. And I don't want to say too much about it because I want to let my paper speak for itself. But I will say that my part of the project has been to deal with the early Theosophy, with Blavatsky and her reading, her understanding of Kabbalah. So it remains for me to thank you all very much for coming, especially in light of what David said, really thank you all very much for coming. Thank you very much to Boaz. Boaz has a very fun attitude to scholarship, and thank you for being very interested in interesting things. Boaz has been a great supervisor to work with my postdoc. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to future collaborations. Thank you very much to Asha. You've made our lives a lot easier. And I would like to end by dedicating this conference to my late supervisor, who very sadly passed away in August of 2012 after a very brief illness. And it was a great shock to us all, and it was a great shock to me to lose my doctor father so early in my career. He was a very conscientious supervisor. He was very hardworking and dedicated and extremely knowledgeable. And without him, I wouldn't be here at this conference on Theosophy. So yeah, I'm known as Nicholas Goodrick Clarke.